morning to all of you. I'm Dr. Tushar Ramesh, Junior Resident, Department of Orthopedics, Amala Institute of Medical Science. Today, we will be having a topic presentation on elbow instability. Contents. This discussion will be going through an introduction, anatomy, classification of elbow instability, how it is clinically evaluated, and we'll have some discussion on simple dislocation, complex fracture dislocation of elbow, chronic posterolateral instability, chronic elbow dislocation, and complications, and a conclusion. First, let's see the introduction. Acute elbow instability ranges from simple dislocation with soft tissue lesions alone to complex dislocations involving fractures of the coronoid and radial head. Simple dislocation, for the most part, are stable after reduction, managed with early mobilization, and have good outcomes with relatively low complication rates. In contrast, complex fracture dislocations render the elbow very unstable, and therefore surgical intervention is usually necessary to restore the bony and ligamentous stability to allow early range of movement. The risk of complications include stiffness, chronic instability, heterotropic ossification, and arthrosis are high, and clinical outcomes have traditionally been suboptimal. Detailed knowledge of the relevant anatomy is crucial in understanding of the injury patterns and in application of successful systemic treatment algorithms that will minimize the complications and improve the outcomes. Chronic instability is most commonly posterolateral due to incompetence of the lateral ulnar collateral ligament, leading to recurrent episodes of subluxation or dislocation. Most symptomatic patients require surgical reconstruction of the lateral ulnar collateral ligament using tendons or autografts or allografts, which produce favorable clinical results. Let's see the anatomy of elbow joint. Elbow is a modified hinge joint with a degree of intrinsic stability owing to the joint congruity, opposing tension of triceps, flexors, and ligamentous constraints. The joint includes an ulnotrochlear joint, a radiocapitellar joint, and a proximal radio-ulnar joint. Let's see the joint characteristics. The radiohumeral articulation is a pivot joint. Radial head is covered by cartilage for approximately 240 degrees. The lateral 120 degrees contains no cartilage. This is crucial for internal fixation of radial head fractures. The ulnohumeral articulation, which is a hinge joint. And let's see the coronoid fossa. Coronoid fossa on the distal humerus receive the coronoid tip in deeper flexion. Let's see the coronoid tip. The coronoid tip has a buttress effect in preventing the posterior dislocations. The capsule. Capsule is maximally distended at 70 to 80 degrees of flexion. Distal attachment of the anterior capsule is found 6 mm distal to the tip of the coronoid. Coronoid is an intra-articular structure while considering the elbow joint. Now let's see the osteology. First, let's see the spiral groove. The shaft of the humerus has a spiral groove posteriorly which contains the radial nerve. This lies approximately 13 cm proximal to the articular surface of the trochlea. A distal flare. Distal flare of humerus includes the medial and lateral epicondyles. This flare accounts for the half of the elbow joint. The trochlea. This is a spool shape and it is located medially. And capitulum is located laterally. Now the sublime tubercle. The sublime tubercle on the ulna is where the anterior bundle of the ulnar collateral ligament attaches distally. Now let's see the columns. The distal humerus contains the medial and lateral columns. This is the diagram showing. First, let's see the ulnar diaphysis. Number 2 is the olecranon. And number 3 is the tip of the olecranon. And number 4, we could see the coronoid process. And 6, the ulnar notch. The ulnar notch is divided by a transverse portion composed of a fatty tissue in an anterior portion made of the coronoid process and the posterior olecranon. Number 8 is the sublime tubercle. As I have explained earlier, the anterior bundle of the medial ulnar collateral ligament distal attachment. And 9 is the radial notch. 10 is the ulnar tuberosity. 11 is the radial diaphysis. 12 is the radial head. The next one is the radial neck, and this is the radial tuberosity. And this is a osteology of the humerus. First one is the anterior view. Second is the posterior view. Third is the lateral view and the medial view. First, let's see this is the humeral diaphysis, and number two we could see the lateral supracondylar ridge. Number three, we could see the medial supracondylar ridge. This is the radial fossa. This is the coronoid fossa, and number six we could see the olecranon fossa. The lateral epicondyle, the medial epicondyle, the capitulum, the number 10, the trochlea, then the trochlear groove, and the sulcus for the ulnar nerve, which is described by number 12 in the last diagram. This is the sublime tubercle as marked number 8. I have told that it provides attachment for the medial ulnar collateral ligament distally. Now let's see the arthrology, axis and alignment. The elbow joint has an anterior tilt. The joint surface is anteriorly tilted approximately 30 degrees relative to the shaft of humerus. Varus or valgus. 6 degrees of valgus is present. Rotation, it is internally rotated by 5 degrees. Now let's see the axis of rotation. It is centered at the trochlea and capitulum. It passes through the antero-inferior medial epicondyle. Now let's see the stabilizers of the elbow joint. There are primary stabilizers which are static, secondary stabilizers which are static and dynamic. First, the primary static stabilizers are the ulnohumeral joint, the medial collateral ligament complex, the lateral collateral ligament complex. Secondary dynamic and static stabilizers are radiocapitular joint, which is a static stabilizer, and the dynamic stabilizers are joint capsule and the musculature. Why? First, let's see the ulnohumeral joint. The highly congruent bony architecture of the ulnohumeral joint makes it an inherently stable articulation, particularly at the extremes of flexion and extension. The distal humerus is composed of two columns that flare out the diaphysis and include the medial and lateral condyles and epicondyles, which serve as an important site for the origin of other stabilizing structures of the elbow. Positioned between the two columns are the hemispherical capitulum on the lateral side and adjacent trochlea on the medial side. Its name is derived from the Latin word meaning pulley. The trochlea is covered by a cartilage or an arc of 300 to 330 degree and articulates with the semilunar notch of the ulna. The medial contour of the trochlea is more prominent and it projects more distally than the lateral portion. Now let's see the medial collateral ligament complex. The medial collateral ligament complex is composed of an anterior, posterior, and a transverse bundle. It provides resistance to valgus and distractive stresses. Its origin is from the antero-inferior aspect of the medial epicondyle and it's inserted into the sublime tubercle of the medial coronoid process. It's composed. Let's see, there is an anterior bundle, which is the most important restraint against valgus stresses. Radial head is the second most important one. Now let's see, there's a posterior bundle. The posterior bundle forms the floor of the cubital tunnel and is the primary resistant to valgus stress in maximal elbow flexion. Earlier I have said that the anterior bundle, which is the most restraint against the valgus stress, now in maximal elbow flexion, it is the posterior bundle of the medial collateral ligament. If this is contracted, flexion may be limited. And there is also a transverse bundle of the medial collateral ligament complex. Now let's see the lateral collateral ligament complex. It consists of a radial collateral ligament, a lateral ulnar collateral ligament complex. Its function is the primary restraint to varus and external stresses during the full arc of elbow motion. Its origin is posterior lateral epicondyle and it is inserted into the crista supinatoris of the proximal ulna. Other parts are the accessory collateral ligament, we could see that, and some believe that the accessory collateral ligament and the radial collateral ligament contribute substantially to the lateral elbow stability. And there is an annular ligament that we could see. It provides stability to the proximal radio-ulnar joint. Now let's see the secondary stabilizers. Secondary static stabilizers, the radiocapitellar joint. This functions as an important constraint to valgus stress. The radial head provides approximately 30% of the valgus stability. This is most important at 0 to 30 degree flexion or pronation. Capsule. The greatest contribution of the capsule on the stability occurs when the elbow is extended. And the third static stabilizer is the origin of the flexor and extensor tendon. Now let's see the dynamic stabilizers. These include muscle crossing the elbow joint, which are the anconeus, brachialis, triceps, and biceps. The function of the dynamic stabilizers is that they provide compressive stability. This is the structural representation of the stability of elbow joint. There is an ulnohumeral articulation, and medially there is medial collateral ligament complex, and there is lateral ulnar ligament complex. And there is that is the primary stabilizers, this outer triangle. Inside there is secondary stabilizers, that is radiohumeral articulation, common flexor tendon origin, and laterally the common extensor tendon origin. All these are covered by the capsule. Now let's see the classification of elbow instability. Simple classification for elbow instability does not exist. If it is useful for the treatment of decision making, at least 5 criteria must be considered. First, the factor that should be considered is the timing, whether it should be acute, chronic, or recurrent, and the articulations involved, the elbow versus the radial head, and the direction of displacement, varus, valgus, anterior or posterolateral rotatory, and the degree of displacement, whether it is a subluxation or a complete dislocation, and the presence or absence of associated fractures. But not all of these can be congenital and acquired. First, let's see the timing. Elbow instability can be acute. In acute elbow instability, the entities which are included are simple elbow dislocation, terrible triads, varus posteromedial rotatory instability, posterior montagia fracture dislocation, transolecranon fracture dislocation, SX Lopez tree injury, which is the longitudinal forearm instability. In chronic, there is posterolateral rotatory instability, ulnar collateral ligament insufficiency, unstable throwing elbow, combined medial collateral ligament, lateral collateral ligament insufficiency, and a chronically subluxated elbow. And the last one, recurrent instability. Now let's consider another factor, which is the articulations involved. Because the elbow joint is a joint with 2 articulations within one capsule, there are 2 categories of elbow instability according to the articulations involved. The hinge joint, that is the radius and ulna as a unit articulating with the humerus. The proximal radio-ulnar joint. Of course, the stability can involve both the joints. Instability can involve both joints in a combined fashion. Elbow. The most common category of elbow instability that is involving the hinge joint, that is the ulnohumeral and radiohumeral joints. The instability can be congenital or acquired, although the former is rare. It is commonly a hinge joint that is predisposed to recurrent instability. Now let's consider the proximal radio-ulnar joint. The second category of elbow instability that is involving the proximal radio-ulnar joint with subluxation or dislocation of the radial head from ulna. This can be congenital or acquired. Dislocation of the radial head from ulna is usually traumatic and is often a part of Montagia fracture subluxation. Elbow and the proximal ulnar joint. This can be considered as a divergent type of articulation instability. Elbow and the proximal radio-ulnar joint instability usually is traumatic and represents a combination of 2 previous categories. Functionally, it can be thought of a variant of elbow dislocation. Now let's consider the direction of displacement. Posterolateral rotatory instability is the most common pattern of instability, particularly which is the recurrent. It is usually posterolateral rather than direct posterior, so that the coronoid can pass inferior to the trochlea and posterolateral rotatory instability represent a spectrum of instability. It is a three-dimensional displacement of ulna over the humerus. That is in this figure we can see that the radius moves or moving with ulna such a way that the ulna supinates and it externally rotates in case of an axial compression, that is fall on an outstretched hand. Anterior. The anterior instability of the elbow is rare and typically seen in association with fractures of the olecranon. The collateral ligaments may be torn but can be either intact or still attached to the bony fracture fragments when the olecranon fracture is comminuted and is close to the coronoid. Valgus. Valgus instability is seen in one of the two varieties, that is post-traumatic or chronic overload. Post-traumatic valgus instability implies the rupture of the medial collateral ligament. It may be associated with disruption of other soft tissues on the medial side of the elbow. Valgus instability is usually found in patients with radial head fractures and are usually associated with tears of medial collateral ligament or in patients with severe elbow instability, such as occurs after a dislocation that has disrupted the lateral ligament complex. The medial collateral ligament usually heals after the elbow dislocation, perhaps because of the vascularized muscle that surrounds it. Varus instability. Varus instability is attributable to the disruption of the lateral collateral ligament complex and can be shown acutely in patients with elbow dislocation. And in many patients with recurrent or chronic instability, this ligament fails to heal. The forces across the elbow are principally valgus because of the anatomical alignment, with the result that is often not subjected to varus stress. Now let's see the degree of displacement. Posterolateral rotatory instability can be considered as a spectrum consisting of three stages according to the degree of soft tissue disruption. In stage 1, the elbow subluxates in posterolateral rotatory direction, with the patient have a positive lateral pivot shift test, which I will be describing later. And in stage 2, the elbow dislocates completely so that the coronoid is perched under the trochlea. In stage 3, the elbow dislocates fully so that the coronoid rests behind the humerus. Stage 3 is again subclassified, that is in complete dislocation. The stage 3A, the anterior band of the medial collateral ligament is intact and the elbow is stable due to valgus stress after reduction. In stage 3B, anterior medial collateral ligament is disrupted so that the elbow is unstable in valgus. In stage 3C, the entire humerus is stripped of soft tissues, rendering the elbow grossly unstable, even when a splint or cast is applied with the elbow in a semi-flex position. Now, let's consider the associated fractures. How can it affect the elbow instability? Fracture dislocations most commonly involve the coronoid and radial head, and the injuries are difficult to treat and prone to unsatisfactory results. That has been termed as the terrible triad of the elbow. When the radial head and coronoid are fractured in a dislocated elbow, the capsule is still attached to the humerus, and the coronoid fragment, the medial soft tissues, are often still intact, so that the elbow is stable to valgus when holding the forearm pronated. Some fractures, such as intra-articular supracondylar fractures of the humerus and comminuted fractures of the olecranon coronoid, can cause elbow instability without disruption of the collateral ligaments. However, majority of the unstable elbows also have disruption of one or both the ligaments, even in presence of fractures. Radial head fractures do not cause significant instability unless the medial collateral ligament is disrupted. These fractures have a strong influence on prognosis and treatment. Now let's see the clinical evaluation of unstable elbows. First, however, the assessment of elbow instability must be performed owing to the potential high energy trauma typically associated with elbow dislocation. Obtaining a history should allow one to discern the mechanism of injury, severity of injury, and additional comorbidities. After limb and life-threatening injuries have been treated, The physical examination should focus on the involved limb. The injured elbow should be assessed for deformities and presence of open injuries. A dislocated elbow often appears with the forearm held in varus and supination. Before any manipulation, assessment of the neurovascular status should be determined. In particular, entrapment of the brachial artery, median nerve, ulnar nerve are of concern owing to their increased frequency during manipulation. Associated injuries should be sought out with the evaluation of the ipsilateral shoulder and wrist, along with the ipsilateral distal radio-ulnar joint and the interosseous membrane. Localized swelling owing to the soft tissue disruption is common and may lead to the constriction of the facial compartments, resulting in the increased intracompartmental pressure. As all patients presenting with acute dislocation should initially be evaluated for the presence and development of compartment syndrome in future. Now let's see the instability test for the elbow. First, varus instability test. It is usually done to find out whether the lateral collateral ligament complex insufficiency. The elbow should be flexed to 30 degrees to unlock the olecranon from its fossa. It also releases the anterior capsule. Then a varus stress is applied across the elbow with the shoulder in full internal rotation to lock the shoulder. In presence of varus instability, the gap between the capitulum and the radial head will increase. Now, valgus instability test. Ulnar collateral ligament is tested. The patient is seated and his or her forearm is held securely between examiner's hand and trunk. The patient's elbow is flexed to 30 degrees to unlock the olecranon from its fossa. A valgus stress is applied to the elbow and the ulnar collateral ligament is palpated. External rotation of the humerus is done to lock the shoulder joint. Pain, tenderness, or opening of elbow are compatible with ulnar collateral ligament injury. Now let's see the rotatory instability test. Lateral ulnar collateral ligament insufficiency. The test that usually we perform is a pivot shift test. It is usually performed at a GA with an image intensifier. The patient will be positioned in supine with the shoulder and elbow flexed to 90 degrees. The patient's forearm is fully supinated and the examiner holds the patient's wrist, forearm and slowly extends the elbow while applying a valgus and axial compression force. The subluxation of radius and ulna from the humerus causes a prominence posterolaterally over the radial head and a dimple between the radial head and capitulum. When elbow is approximately in 45 degrees of flexion, ulna reduces with a palpable and visible clunk. This is how under GA, using an image intensifier, the pivot shift is done. I have said that you can see that the shoulder is in 90 degrees of flexion, the elbow is in 90 degrees of flexion, a valgus load is applied, and it causes a dimple on the radial side. And when we extend in when it is came back when we does a flexion, it reduces. Now let's other test is the apprehension test. Asking the patient to rise from the chair using their arm to push them into standing position may reproduce the symptoms of instability. In such cases, patient is reluctant to extend elbow as it involves axial load, valgus and supination of the forearm. Similarly, we can also ask the patient to do a press up, in which the patient will be reluctant to extend the elbow owing to the instability. Now let's see the imaging. In case of acute trauma settings, a plain X-ray of the elbow should be done before and after any reduction maneuvers. And in case of we are suspecting a complex fracture, that is the fracture of the coronoid or radial head is suspected, a CT scan with 3D reconstruction is done. And MRI can be done to assess the ligamentous insufficiency and to assess the soft tissue injury. First, let's see the simple dislocation. Simple dislocation most commonly occur in a posterior and lateral manner without major fractures. 10% of cases, however, can have minor avulsion near the epicondyles and or the coronoid process. However, they are not significant. Anterior dislocations, although uncommon, should remain in the differential diagnosis owing to their association with triceps disruption or olecranon fractures. It should be noted that even a rare divergent dislocation is typically associated with high energy trauma. The mechanism of posterior dislocation is typically a combination of valgus, supination, or external rotation of the forearm, causing an axial load through the elbow. Summation of these forces initiate a sequence of soft tissue injuries from lateral to the medial aspects of the elbow, leading to posterolateral rotation of the forearm relative to the humerus, culminating in a posterior dislocation of proximal humerus and ulna as the coronoid process is displaced posteriorly in relation to trochlea and can be clinically reproduced by the manner known as the lateral pivot shift test. Treatment. The primary objective of the treatment for simple dislocation is to provide a stable reduction that allows early range of motion. The reduction can be completed with or without sedation. Reduction is performed by flexing the elbow approximately 25 degrees while applying longitudinal traction combined with supination of the forearm and a counter traction at the upper arm provided by the assistant. Varus and valgus instability should be assessed with elbow in 30-degree flexion and full extension. Initial manage includes immobilization approximately 2 to 3 weeks, followed by flexion and extension in a hinge splint for 4 weeks. Afterward, unrestricted flexion and extension may be allowed. However, care should be taken to avoid excessive valgus load. After complete dislocation, some instability will be present, given that both medial and ulnar collateral ligaments have been disrupted. If this dislocation occurs in extension, the elbow should be reassessed with the forearm in pronation. If this position proves to be more stable, a hinge brace should be applied. It is absolutely critical that the ulnar nerve must be identified and protected and transposed anteriorly if necessary. This is standard during any repair procedures involving the medial compartment of the elbow. Complete dislocations almost always include disruption of the medial collateral ligament complex, sometimes even avulsing the overlying flexor pronator muscular structures. The ligament complex can be repaired with a large braided non-absorbable sutures, suture anchors, bone tunnel, or in certain situations, autogenous tendon grafts. After surgery, the stability of the elbow must be assessed. If the instability persists, a hinge external fixator with a skeletal fixation should be applied. This can ensure the joint range of motion with maintenance of reduction. If the joint is stable after surgery, a hinge brace with or without extension block can be used for 4 to 6 weeks. In addition to a supervised range of motion program, the follow-up radiographs should be obtained to ensure that if the joint is stable after surgery, a hinge brace with or without an extension block can be used for 4 to 6 weeks, in addition to a supervised range of motion program. Follow-up radiographs should be obtained to ensure that the joint is maintained in appropriate reduction. Now let's see one of the most difficult elbow instability injuries, that is when complex fracture dislocation, appropriately termed as the terrible triad. It is a combination of ligamentous injury with coronoid and radial head fractures and is found to have high complication rates. The most effective method to stabilize these structures require surgical intervention to allow for early motion. Closed reduction often results in redislocation, which may risk further damage. This type of injury can be appropriately assessed with a three-dimensional CT reconstruction to address each component of the injury. Here we can see the radial head fracture, the coronoid process fracture, and the posterior dislocation. This is the radiograph showing a radial head fracture and a posterior dislocation. And we could also see that the fracture of the anterior bony buttress, which consists of the coronoid process and the radial head, and repair of the medial collateral ligament and the lateral ulnar collateral ligament. Even small coronoid fractures should be repaired if possible, because their repair adds to additional reinforcement against the dislocation and restoration of function of the anterior capsule. The coronary can be secured with a combination of suture fixation or a screw fixation. After the repair or replacement of the radial head, the radial extensor mass and the lateral collateral ligament can be reattached to the lateral condyle of the humerus. This is immediately followed by an assessment of stability through full range of motion. If there is dislocation during elbow extension before reaching 30 to 40 degree from full extension, it may be necessary to repair the medial collateral ligament and apply a hinged external fixation. If redislocation occurs before the elbow approaches in full extension, it will likely also be unstable in a cast or splint. This is the intraoperative view showing the fracture of the radial head in complex elbow dislocation. This is the radial head which has been surgically resected. We can note that the bare area of the lateral condyle of the humerus with the suture angle placed indicating the site of traumatic avulsion of the lateral collateral ligamentogen. This is the postoperative lateral view of the elbow showing the radial head replacement with a reduced and concentric elbow joint. Now let's see the chronic posterolateral instability. Although many structures are disrupted in elbow dislocation, chronic instability is primarily owing to the deficiency of lateral collateral ligament, resulting in posterolateral rotatory instabilities. Some studies have reported that nearly 1/3 of the patients with simple dislocation of the elbow treated by closed reduction had long-term symptoms of instability. Often these patients present with a history of persistent recurring pain, clicking, catching or subluxation within the range of motion. Patients generally recall one episode of trauma that may or may not have resulted in dislocation, or sometimes even an iatrogenic case such as an excessively lateral surgical approach in the release of lateral epicondylitis and can result in posterolateral instability. The range of motion in this patient is usually pain-free with a negative valgus and bare stress testing. A lateral pivot shift test is the most sensitive test for clinical diagnosis of posterolateral rotatory instability and is often performed under GA. To recreate the mechanism of injury, as I have said earlier, the patient lies supine on the examination table and the involved arm overhead with the shoulder in external rotation. The elbow is placed in extension with the forearm in supination and a valgus rod is simultaneously applied. Elbow is slowly brought from extension to flexion and the radial head is felt to slip back in place. Even simpler, the patient can be asked to push from the chair with their forearms in supination. If the pain or instability is felt, the elbow proceeds to extension and the test is positive. Another test known as the posterolateral rotatory drawer test has the elbow placed in 40 to 90 degrees of flexion while applying the anteroposterior force on the radius and ulna. This is done to subluxate the forearm away from the humerus on the lateral side. This test can be considered positive if subluxation or apprehension is elicited. Now let's see the imaging. Generally, plain radiographs are normal, but sometimes that can show the avulsion of the lateral epicondyle or widening or incongruity of the joint space between radius and capitulum. Stress radiographs or fluoroscopy can be useful. When a lateral pivot shift test is performed, elbow is placed in a maximum rotatory and subluxation and the ulnohumeral joint space is seen to be widened on the lateral and anteroposterior views. Additionally, a lateral view can show posterior subluxation of the radial head. An MR arthrography and a diagnostic elbow arthroscopy can be used to visualize the damage of the lateral collateral ligament complex and the radial head subluxation respectively. Now the treatment. Patients with less severe symptoms can be managed with an extensor strengthening exerciser or athletic neoprene sleeves, whereas patients with more severe symptoms and signs of chronic instability require surgery. Patients requiring an operation need reconstruction of the lateral ulnar collateral ligament, usually with an autograft or an allograft tendon. Various operative techniques successfully using different tendon grafts sites have been investigated in literature, including the palmaris longus, plantaris, gracilis, and semitendinosus. Now let's see chronic elbow dislocation. A chronic elbow dislocation is a disabling condition associated with severe limitation of elbow function and often significant pain. Neglected elbow dislocations or inadequate assessment after an attempted reduction can lead to chronic dislocation of the elbow. Arthritic changes occur rapidly if the elbow is not reduced. Radiographs can readily make the diagnosis. However, CT evaluation should be considered to help the surgical planning. The goals of the treatment can be conflicting because it involves restoring stable concentric joint while facilitating early motion with a satisfactory arc of motion. In younger population, treatment options vary depending upon the degree of post-traumatic arthritis. This is the lateral and anteroposterior radiograph demonstrating chronic elbow dislocation. Note that the presence of surrounding of heterotropic ossification. If there is mild to moderate arthritis, then open reduction and reconstruction of the medial and lateral collateral ligaments and a placement of hinge external fixator is an option. There is a risk of redislocation even and hinge external fixator and a temporary internal play may be needed to keep the joint concentrically reduced a bit the expense of the total joint motion. If there is more severe arthritis, distraction, interpositional arthroplasty or joint fusion may be considered. In older age group, total elbow arthroplasty is a good potential option. This is a surgery after ligament reconstruction and the hinge external fixator was placed for chronic elbow dislocation. But we can see that there is a residual subluxation of the elbow joint. And this is the lateral and AP radiograph demonstrating chronic elbow dislocation, attempted open reduction, and hinge external fixator converted into a static temporary internal fixation with a bridge plate holding the joint reduced. The hardware was removed after 4 weeks and a range of motion was started. Now let's see the complications of elbow instability. First, nerve and vessel injury. Approximately 20% of the dislocations are complicated by a nerve injury, the most common being the ulnar nerve. This is generally owing to the valgus stretching of the nerve. Median nerve involvement occurs secondary to stretch injuries or as a result of compression from swelling. The most common symptom is a transient paresthesia. However, permanent deficit may result if the nerve is entrapped within the joint. Nerve entrapment can potentially be detected by an MRI. Injuries to the brachial artery include spasm, thrombosis, intimal damage, or rupture. Because these do not necessarily occur exclusively with neurological symptoms, aggressive investigation and treatment of suspected injuries should be undertaken, including imaging, arterial reconstruction, stabilization of joint, and even fasciotomy. Chronic instability. Chronic instability is challenging to manage because owing to the manifestation of many disruptions. It may be related to the bony malunion, non-union, bone loss, attenuation of the ligament complex, and even a combination of these. Up to 50% of the patients have laxity without demonstrating symptoms of frank ligamentous instability. Deficiency in the lateral collateral ligament can result in an unsupported lateral forearm, which may cause rotation of the posterior humerus. A symptomatic laxity can result in chronic instability, therefore indicating a ligament reconstruction. The next one is arthrosis or articular injury. As the initial injury becomes more complex, the chondral damage from the initial injury may develop into more chronic problems. Even in the absence of radiographic evidence of a fracture, osteochondral injury can readily occur after the elbow is dislocated. Moreover, the osteochondral fragments entrapped in the intra-articular joint space can result further articular injury and may prompt surgical excision after close reduction. This osteochondral injury can have an effect on long-term functional outcomes of the joint. Now, the next complication is a compartment syndrome. Intracompartmental pressures can dramatically rise within the flexor compartment owing to the intramuscular bleeding and edema, even in the absence of vascular injury. High clinical suspicion of compartment syndrome should be maintained with the physical examination findings for pain on passive movement of fingers and wrists, as well as pain out of proportion. The next complications are contractures and stiffness. Thickening and fibrosis of the anterior joint capsule is a common complication of simple and complex elbow dislocations. Greater loss of motion can occur in case of chronic elbow dislocation. Loss of motion can be minimized by prompt concentric reduction and institution of early motion. Bracing and physical therapy are acceptable treatments of an established contracture within 1 year of injury. In the event that the contracture results in the arc of motion less than 30 to 130 degree, that is unresponsive to bracing therapy, capsulotomy is indicated to mobilize the joint. Another complication is the heterotropic ossification. It can be seen 4 to 6 weeks after the injury on plain radiographs and are present up to 75% of the cases. Both the lateral and medial collateral ligaments are often involved. However, functional limitation is generally not observed. Fewer than 5% of cases involve motion limiting ossification, but it generally occurs within the anterior soft tissues. Risk factors such as patient age, gender, injury to central nervous system, burns play a role in development of heterotropic ossification. Gentle, active, and continuous passive motion reduces the risk of heterotropic ossification, whereas aggressive manipulation to combat stiffness results in an increased risk. High-risk patient should be treated with heterotropic ossification prophylaxis such as low dose of radiation and NSAID drug therapy. In an event of motion-limiting ossification, resection should be undertaken 3 to 6 months after the injury once it has determined that the ossification process has matured. This should be supported with the presence of well-defined cortication of intralesional trabeculae on plain radiograph. I would like to conclude by saying the elbow instability includes a wide variety of disorders ranging from simple acute dislocation to complex dislocations with additional injuries. These injuries require assessment of the entire upper extremity in full neurovascular exam. Simple dislocations are the most common and can usually be treated with a close reduction and early active motion to produce excellent outcomes. More complicated dislocations with fractures generally require operative intervention to repair the soft tissue and bony fragment to yield the stability and early active motion. The presence of instability after a close reduction may require dynamic bracing or ligament reconstruction depending on the severity. Compromise of the lateral ulnar collateral ligament causes the posterolateral rotatory instability, the most common kind of recurrent instability. In these cases, conservative treatment is often unsuccessful and surgical reconstruction using tendon grafts is needed. Overall, non-operative treatment produces results that are equal to, if not better than those of the operative intervention. Flexion contracture, the most common complications, can be treated with early range of motion exercises. Recurrent instability is not a common complication. However, it generally requires surgical treatment. That's all. Thank you.
It was an excellent presentation. You have covered almost all topics related to elbow instability, and each and every slide contained important points, and you should be able to learn all these points. Can you show that triangle, a big triangle and a small triangle?
Sir. Sir.
Under whose name it is known? It is called O'Driscoll's fortress. O'Driscoll's fortress. O'Driscoll. Fortress means okay, or a cage. So
it's a fort.
It is a fortress. It prevents a elbow dislocation. So the big triangle is the primary stabilizer, and the small triangle is the secondary stabilizer. And surrounding the capsule is also important. You should be able to draw this picture when somebody asks you about elbow instability.
Well, I was trying to connect it to the power. Anyway, he presented an exhaustive details of dislocation. Could you go back to the last but one slide?
Sir,
The last but one slide. Last one is a thank you slide. Yeah.
sir,
Could you enlarge it a little bit? Not this one.
sir,
Go back to the previous one.
sir,
All right. Could you enlarge it a
okay,
little
sir.
bit? Right. Because ultimately, the message here should be, well, that's fine. The elbow problems, we still do get lot of fractures. At the same time, very complex injuries we do get. So we cannot escape the problem of elbow injuries. Straightforward dislocations without complications are quite unremarkable. We do get, but otherwise, how to handle a very bad dislocation. Recurrent dislocations, I don't think we get very often. Once in our career, you may get one or two cases, but not much at all. Whereas ligament injuries and complications do get, but very often we don't operate on them unless there is a definite indication for surgery like nerve entrapment, etc. So there are undergraduate students listening also. They should know how to examine an elbow. Basically, that was mentioned very well, and the anatomical features have been mentioned. But you should look for four things. Number one, pain. That's the most common complaint which the patient will say. Number two, ankylosis or instability, which means where is there any, ankylosis or stability, stiffness. The third is instability, and fourth is the deformity. So these are the four complications, four complaints and this thing which the patient might present with. So pain, stiffness, instability, and deformity, which they should be able to look for. Very important thing is an elbow examination is never complete without examining and telling the status of the ulnar nerve. But the ulnar nerve is most likely to be indicated in chronic injuries of the elbow. But even sometimes horrible looking x-rays, they do have reasonably good function. Kishore, you remember your girlfriend who has been coming there with so bad an injury, which we treated her with so many problems, but she was quite satisfied. You remember that girl? Yeah, right, yes.
With a tattoo.
You remember her. Right. That girl had a horrible looking x-ray, unfortunately. But her functional loss was relatively less. Probably she will come back with a elbow problem, and she probably ultimately becomes a grandmother, or sometime at that point she might probably become for an elbow arthroplasty. Some of you could be able to do that. The point is, even if the elbow X-ray wise looking horrible, we may not get a patient which requires surgical intervention. But you should be aware of the possibilities necessary. I also would like to know what has happened to that patient. Dr. Dijo is on the line. Dr. Dijo.
Tushar, you can mute.
Dr. Dijo.
Tushar.
All right. You
Hello.
remember that Dr. Tangwal, whom I handed over to you during those early days of our corona scare.
Yes. Vaidere, le? One Vaidere.
Right, yes.
Yeah. He had an elbow stiffness, but he could manage up to his range is from 100 to about 30 degree. 30 degree.
When
So
did you
reasonable.
last see him?
Hello.
When did you last see him?
It was about 2 months ago.
Right. Okay. When he comes next time, tell him that I would like to see him as a courtesy, because I just want to know what has happened. It might be probably almost a year by that time.
Yes. It was done in April when it was closed for Corona during the lockdown days.
That is true. That is true. So the whole point is, it was a very bad elbow fracture with the dislocation. We had to do a lot of surgery on him. I only gave you a caveat not to put a prosthesis onto the radial head. Apart from that, you went and did a good job. So ultimately, we don't know what has happened to the patient. Over a period of time, they improve. The other complication, that's what my message here is. Sometimes, despite looking at a horrible X-ray, patients usually recover to a certain extent, degree of functional this thing. But otherwise, patients are not coming for surgical interventions for elbow instability as such. So we may have to remember it for the sake of examination purposes, and we should pick and choose the correct type of patient requiring surgery. So that's all. Mostly, I wanted to convey the importance of examination, clinical examination, especially with reference to the pain, stiffness, instability, as well as deformity, and the presence or absence of any ulnar nerve entrapment. That's it. I don't think I have.
We have got a patient coming for the examination every year with a posterolateral instability who had a terrible triad of elbow, and he will be coming to next exams also. So our PGs should be learning the instability part, how to examine the instability, how to get into a diagnosis. This case may be kept as a short case. Most PG examinations in future also this patient may be coming, and it is not a rare thing. Elbow instability can happen to anybody, so such patients will be kept for your examination.
That patient had an unstable elbow dislocation.
Ade,
Who was redone and then put a Steenman pin or something like that inside, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
He had a coronoid fracture. It was a terrible triad.
yeah, that's true.
It is still remaining subluxated, but patient is having very good function, except for a posterolateral instability and a FFT of 15 degrees.
I also as a patient who had an MCL instability. നമ്മൾ TOS പ്രശ്നം ചെയ്തിരുന്നു. ഒരു കൊളാജൻ ഡിസോർഡർ ഉള്ള പേഷ്യന്റ് MCL instability ആയിട്ട് വന്നിട്ട് ആ പേഷ്യന്റ് മറ്റേ എക്സാമിന് വെക്കാറുണ്ട്. അത് സ്ഥിരം MCL ആൻഡ് DRUG instability.
All PGs should learn about elbow examination and instability, how to assess instability. Chair lift-up test is an important test. It is difficult to do, and you are not supposed to do pivot shift test. It is a test which is done under general anesthesia. Instead, you can do some other test. It is called chair lift-up test. So patient will be sitting in a chair, and he will be trying to lift himself up from the chair using his hands with the forearm supinated, and the patient will not be able to do that. He will be having pain. So that is called chair lift-up test. That is suggestive of a posterolateral instability. And another interesting point is valgus instability is due to medial collateral ligament. Varus instability is due to lateral collateral ligament, but posterolateral instability is due to again lateral collateral ligament. Sometimes you may be confused. And the three stages also should be remembered. One is only a ligament instability. Second is called incomplete dislocation. That is called first ulnar. And third is complete dislocation. These three stages, it is called circle of Puri. So the dislocation will be happening by disruption of the structures from lateral, going posteriorly and reading medially up to the coronoid process. So this circle is called circle of Puri.
We covered almost extensively. The only thing is each and every topic should be just summarized immediately, or towards the end, so that the people who are listening will be able to take home some points of worth remembering. We will continue to see elbow problem because elbow injuries are not uncommon. Dislocations per se are not that common here. We do get posterior dislocation uncomplicated. Other dislocations are relatively rare, but we do get very bad elbow fractures.
At present, we have got a patient in the ward. He had a fall from 10 feet height. Luckily, he had only an elbow injury, but that elbow is terribly injured. There is a comminuted fracture of the radial head. The elbow is unstable even after reduction, and we did a temporary stabilization, and he is waiting for some reconstruction. We are planning for that.
Right. But let the soft tissue injuries heal, and then
Yes,
probably
I am waiting for, patient is pushing for surgery, but I am waiting for the soft tissue to heal.
nothing. So if there are nothing more, we can probably call it a day. Only thing is we should be
I have
remembering.
one addition to,
Right.
I think the dislocation, acute dislocation need not be so extensively covered in instabilities. Suppose you are asked a short note for a question on instability, ligament, elbow instability. If you write so much about dislocation, even though you can call it as an acute instability, that is not what is expected, I think. That is one
Yes, sir.
difference of opinion. It should be more on recurrent or chronic instability. Acute instability is actually a different topic, dislocations, subluxations and all. So that the time could be utilized, or the answer can be utilized for reconstructive surgery for chronic or recurrent instabilities. The presentation was satisfactory. That is all I have to add.
You don't have any problem, sir, right now.
No,
Right. Very good.
elbow is okay.
Right. Very good. That's a testimonial from a surgeon who had a dislocation reduced by himself and then treated properly. Now he doesn't have any problem. So most elbow dislocations are without much problems, but there are some things which comes with problems. That's it. Okay, then see you back tomorrow.